Hey, what's up? It's Emily from Make Tech Work for You, and today I come to you in the Salesforce world with a little bit of an appeal and a invitation to join me in using flows and using automations, even if you don't know how. Even if you can't get it exactly right. And I'm going to use the example I have of a flow that I'm making that is far from right. In fact, it's far from efficient. So I know there's a better way to do this, but I know also that I couldn't do it. There's some things about flows that are not solidified in my mind of how to do it and how to make it the most efficient code. Because let me be honest, I see that these are drag and drop options, but flow is code. It's code made into these little pictures. And if you don't understand the basics of code and how it's working, which in some cases here, I don't understand the basics of how this is working, then you're not going to get it as efficient and beautiful as it could be. But that shouldn't stop you. In fact, my good friend Sam Shane gave me this message and reminded me that you can't go all the way to beautiful, efficient automation, 0 to 60. Like if you were doing this stuff manually anyway, you cannot get the most beautiful, efficient code right away. You know, if you're not a programmer, if you're not really steeped in this stuff. But you can get it a little bit more manually. This is automation, but it's kind of dirty, inefficient, almost somewhat manual aspects of this automation here. And that's okay. People in mission-driven work are go-getters. We get the job done even if we had to work a little harder at first. So I hope to clean this code up in the future, but for now I want to show you how I struggled through getting the outcome I wanted, even with lack of knowledge and kind of inefficient code and flow. So the outcome I wanted is every time a campaign is created or updated, I want to check the campaign member statuses that are associated with that campaign. And if the ones that I want associated with that campaign exist, great. Don't do anything because if you try to update them or anything, you'll throw an error on the record, like this campaign member status already exists. But if it doesn't exist, create it. So here is the inefficient way that I was able to accomplish this. So based on, again, suggestions from Sam Shane, my good friend and colleague and flows guru, I was persuaded to look for the statuses that I wanted individually. There should have been, I know that in theory, I think what I should do is create a record collection that is has all the statuses listed out. So I'm looking for things like approved, transferred, completed, canceled. I should be able to look for all the statuses and put them in a nice like single column invisible table. But I couldn't really figure out how to do that and how to work with that invisible table. So instead, what I've got is a bunch of buckets. Each of these buckets can hold one record. It can hold the record that is the status that I'm asking about. So this one is saying, get all campaign member statuses where the label is called approved, where it's called approved. This one says, get all of them where it's called transferred. Get all of them where it's called completed. If approved doesn't exist yet, this bucket will be empty. If it does exist, it will be full of that one record. So I'm either filling up these buckets or leaving them empty. And then we start moving through each of those buckets with this very manually created loop in a way. I don't know how to use loops and flows yet. That's a programming thing too, loops, that has always kept me from being a great programmer. It just like somehow it's not clicking in my mind what's happening invisibly behind the scenes. That's an area of growth for me. But here is essentially the manual way of doing it. So first decision, we look at that approved bucket, okay? If approved doesn't exist, if that bucket is empty, then let's create it. Great. If it did exist, which is the other outcome, one outcome is approved doesn't exist. The default outcome is approved does exist. I could make that a little more clear if I named an outcome like that, but we'll just have to imagine. If it does exist, we have to move on to the next one. And if it didn't exist and we created it, we have to move on to the next one. So this decision here is just about, it's truly just there. It's always going to be true. It's just to move on. After you've created the record, it asks inside that decision, did you create the record, basically? And the answer is yes. You just move on over to this next decision. And then we look at transferred, same thing. If it didn't exist yet, create the record and then move on to the next decision. If it already existed, just move on to the next decision. If completed didn't exist, create it or move on. And all the way until I'm done looking through my statuses. So it works. And I know it's not exactly as pretty as it could be, but it works. It gets the outcome that I was looking for. So is this wrong? Is it wrong to do it this way? I guess there's some cases you could say, yeah, it's kind of wrong to do it this way. It's inefficient. It's going to take up more resources. It does not follow probably like the standards that flows are supposed to follow when you're building them. But guess what? I'm the one building it. I'm not there yet. And so this gets to the outcome, that I need for my users in Salesforce. My folks need to be able to see these campaign member statuses to do their work. So it works for now. And I, again, invite and encourage everyone that if you're not advanced at something like, whether it's Salesforce, Excel, whatever, you can still try it out and do it. And there's more inefficient manual ways to get it completed. And this can serve as a basis for asking questions about how do I fix it. So I'm sure I'm going to get a flood of how to fix this, which is great. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. And I also hope I get a flood of how do I even get started doing the manual stuff, because that's where I want everyone to be in case they are trepidatious about using flows. But automations is the way to do it. It's the way to be. It's the way to do our work. So anywhere we can put it in whatever format we can, I think it's a good thing. All right, looking forward to hearing all the feedback on this one.